for the faint sound of fabric tearing. Every student froze. The new teacher, Ms. Daniels, stood there, her shirt ripped, her eyes wide, not with fear but something else, something sharp. Just 2 days earlier, everything had seemed perfectly normal. It was the start of spring semester at Westbridge High, a suburban school with a shiny reputation and plenty of secrets. The kind of place where smiles were practiced and prejudice hid behind polite words. Ms. Daniels had walked into that school with quiet confidence. She wasn't just any teacher. She had spent years in tough inner-city schools, mentoring kids most teachers had given up on. But this time she wanted a fresh start, to teach English literature somewhere calm, somewhere she could breathe. Her first day, she wore a simple blue blouse, soft curls framing her face, and that warm smile teachers are born with. Most of the students liked her right away. But not all of them. In the back of the class sat a small group of seniors. Lila, Cody, and Trent. The kind who ruled the hallways with sarcasm and social status. To them, Ms. Daniels wasn't just a new teacher. She was an outsider. And outsiders in Westbridge always got tested. That day, she dismissed class with her usual calm grace. Don't forget, essay due Friday. But as the students shuffled out, a quiet tension lingered. Lila smirked. Cody whispered something cruel under his breath. Ms. Daniels heard it, but let it slide. Because sometimes, silence says more than words. She just didn't know that silence was about to break. Violently. The next morning, the air in room 214 felt off. It wasn't something you could see, it was something you could feel. That strange mix of whispers, glances, and fake smiles that told Ms. Daniels something wasn't right. She tried to ignore it. She'd been through rough classrooms before. She knew the difference between ordinary teenage mischief and something darker. Still, as she set her coffee on the desk, she noticed it. Her name scribbled across the whiteboard in crude, hateful words. Her breath caught for a moment. Then, calm as ever, she erased it. The chalk squeaked loudly, echoing through the silence. "All right," she said softly. "Let's begin." The students shifted in their seats. Some looked away, others snickered. But in the back, Lila, Cody, and Trent exchanged glances like they were in on some private joke. Ms. Daniels began her lesson on symbolism in To Kill a Mockingbird, writing quotes on the board, trying to keep her composure. She talked about how people often judge what they don't understand. She could feel their eyes on her, mocking, daring her to react. Halfway through the class, Cody leaned back in his chair, smirking. "So, Miss D," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "you think people like you really understand how this school works?" The room went quiet. Ms. Daniels turned slowly. "People like me?" she asked, her voice steady, though her pulse quickened. He shrugged. "You know, new people. Outsiders." The way he said it, it carried weight. Meaning. Lila giggled. "Don't take it so seriously, Miss D. We're just joking." Joking. The oldest excuse in the book. Ms. Daniels inhaled deeply. "Put your phone away, Cody," she said. "And you too, Lila." They didn't. Instead, Cody lifted his phone, pretending to film her. "Relax, teach. We're just getting your good side." Laughter broke out again. Cruel. Sharp. That's when it happened. Cody stood, pretending to grab a fallen pen near her desk. As he rose, his hand brushed the edge of her blouse, then tugged hard. The sound of fabric tearing sliced through the room. Every face turned pale. Lila gasped. A boy in the front whispered, "Holy crap!" Ms. Daniels stepped back, her hand clutching the tier, her face trembling, but her eyes went cold. Something inside her shifted. This wasn't humiliation anymore. It was the moment she decided she wasn't going to be anyone's victim. For a few seconds after the rip, no one moved. The only sound was the faint hum of the ceiling fan and the pounding of hearts. Ms. Daniels stood there, composed but burning inside. Every nerve in her body screamed, "Walk out, report them, just leave." But something in her eyes said otherwise. Cody's nervous laugh broke the silence. "Hey, come on, it was just a joke." The class shifted uneasily. Even Lila looked unsure now. Ms. Daniels' voice was low, trembling slightly, but full of power. "A joke?" she repeated. "You think humiliation is a joke?" Her calmness was terrifying. She wasn't shouting. She didn't need to. Her voice alone carried enough gravity to make every kid in that room feel small. Cody opened his mouth again. "Look, we didn't mean." "Sit down." The command cracked like thunder. He froze, then sank back into his chair. Ms. Daniels walked to the front, buttoning her blazer over the torn fabric. "You all wanted to see how far you could push me," she said, pacing slowly. "You wanted to see what I'd do when you crossed the line." Her voice shook slightly, not from fear but from something deeper. Rage, disappointment, heartbreak. Then she stopped, turned, and looked directly at Lila. "You think recording someone's pain is funny? You think hiding behind your phones makes you powerful?" Lila's eyes darted to her desk. The screen was still glowing, recording everything. Ms. Daniels reached into her bag, pulled out her own phone, and placed it on the desk. "Good," she said quietly. "Because so am I." Gasps filled the room. "You see," she continued, "this isn't my first classroom. I've worked with the Department of Education for years. I've seen what bullying does, to students, to teachers, to entire communities. This school was flagged for harassment reports, and I volunteered to find out why." The silence was deafening. "I'm not just your teacher," she said. "I'm the investigator who's been watching, listening, and documenting every single word." Cody's mouth went dry. Lila's hand trembled. "Congratulations," Ms. Daniels said, her tone like ice. "You just handed me all the evidence I need." The bell rang, but no one dared move. The power in that room had shifted completely. For the first time, the students weren't in control. Ms. Daniels was. By the next morning, the entire school was buzzing. Word had spread fast. Something big had gone down in room 214. Whispers filled every hallway, but no one really knew the full story. Not yet. That changed when the principal's office door opened. Inside sat Ms. Daniels, calm, collected, holding a neatly organized folder. Across from her were Cody, Lila, Trent, and their parents, all looking pale and uncomfortable. The superintendent was there too, arms crossed, face unreadable. The meeting started quietly, the principal trying to maintain control. "Ms. Daniels, can you please explain what happened in your class yesterday?" Without a word, she pressed play on her phone. The room filled with the unmistakable sound of laughter. then the words, the slurs, the tear of fabric, the gasps. It was all there. Every second. Cody's mother covered her mouth. Lila's father turned red with embarrassment. This is terrible," the superintendent said, voice shaking with disbelief. "Where did this footage come from?" Ms. Daniels looked directly at Cody. "From the same phones they thought were being used to humiliate me," she said. "Turns out they recorded their own evidence." The silence after that was heavy. When the video ended, no one dared to defend them. The parents stumbled over apologies. The principal looked stunned. But Ms. Daniels wasn't angry anymore. She was steady. Professional. "I didn't come here to punish kids," she said quietly. "I came to expose a culture that lets this kind of behavior grow." Her words hung in the air like truth no one could argue with. The superintendent nodded slowly. "They'll be suspended immediately," he said. "And this incident will be reviewed by the school board." Cody's head dropped into his hands. Lila started to cry. Later that afternoon, Ms. Daniels walked back into her classroom. The moment she stepped through the door, every student stood up. No one told them to. It just happened. She placed her bag down, looked around the room, and said softly, "We're starting over. Today we learn about respect. Not from a book, but from what we just lived." And for the first time since she arrived at Westbridge High, every single student listened. Not out of fear, but respect. Weeks passed, but the echoes of that day never really left the halls of Westbridge High. The story spread like wildfire, first around the district, then across the state. Parents whispered, teachers traded glances, and students suddenly seemed more careful with their words. The incident in room 214 had become more than gossip. It became a lesson. Ms. Daniels, though, never bragged. She didn't seek interviews or attention. Every morning she still arrived early, coffee in hand, that same calm energy following her wherever she went. But something in her had changed. Not broken, not hardened, just refined. Stronger. Her classroom had changed too. The same desks, same whiteboard, same sunlight streaming through the tall windows. But the atmosphere was different now. Warmer, quieter, more thoughtful. Students spoke with care. They asked questions. Some even stayed after class just to talk. One afternoon, as Ms. Daniels packed her things, she noticed a folded note left on her desk. No name. Just 5 words in shaky handwriting. "I'm sorry. You changed me." She smiled softly, her eyes glistening. Maybe she hadn't come here by accident. Maybe this was where she was meant to be. Later that week, the school held an assembly. The superintendent praised Ms. Daniels for her courage and composure. She didn't give a long speech, just a few words that hushed the entire auditorium. "Respect," she said. "It's not about rules or punishment. It's about remembering that every person you meet has a story. And when you choose kindness, you change that story." Applause filled the gym, not the polite kind, but the kind that comes from the heart. That evening, when Ms. Daniels returned to her empty classroom, she opened the drawer where she'd hidden that torn blue blouse. She traced her fingers along the frayed edge, not with sadness, but gratitude. That rip, that single cruel act, had exposed something much deeper. And by standing tall, she'd turned pain into power. She folded the blouse neatly, placed it back inside, and whispered to herself, Never again. Outside the window, students laughed as they walked home, not mockingly this time, but freely. When they saw her, they waved. She waved back, smiling, because sometimes the people they try to break become the ones who rebuild everything.